Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another reading of The Presidents. It's been a while since I've done this. I forgot to take my book with me today, but even if I took it, I wouldn't have time to read. Um, we are going to do Mr. Warren G. Harding. He's the 29th president. We're done. After this guy, we're done with the 20s in that regard. Mr. Harding, President Harding, was born November 2nd, 1865. Test one, two, test one, two. Okay. And he passed away on August 2nd, August, September, October, November, 3 months before his birthday. Wow. He died in San Francisco, California. He was a Baptist. He attended Ohio Central College and graduated in 1882. He was a newspaper publisher and editor. No military service for him. His father was George Tyrone Harding. His mother was Phoebe Elizabeth Dickerson. Mr. Harding, Warren Harding's wife, was named Florence or Flossie Mabel Kling DeWolf Harding. No children by his wife, one alleged illegitimate child, Elizabeth Ann Christian, who died in 2005. Wow. Elizabeth Christian Harding passed away in 2005 with Mistress Nan Britton. Nan Britton. Mr. Harding served as Ohio State Senator for 4 years, Lieutenant Governor of Ohio for another 4 years, and then U.S. Senator for 6 years. Only a one-term president, March 4th, 1921 through August 2nd, 1923, but he died in office. His vice president was Calvin Coolidge. In the election of 1920, Mr. Harding got 404 electoral votes, and James Cox got 127. Oh, that's bad. In the popular vote of 1920, in the election of 1920, Mr. Harding got 16,147,885. Mr. Cox got almost just a little over half of that, with 9,141,505. The cabinet of Mr. Harding includes Charles Evans Hughes, who I believe served on the Supreme Court later on. Secretary of Treasury, he was Secretary of State, Mr. Hughes. Secretary of the Treasury was Andrew Malone. Secretary of War was John Weeks. That's two E's. Weeks, like in 52 weeks a year. Weeks. Excuse me. Attorney General was Harry M. Dougherty. Secretary of the Navy was Edwin Denby. Yeah. Postmaster General was Will Hayes, and then Hubert Work, W-O-R-K, Work. Secretary of the Interior Albert B. Fall. Secretary of Agriculture Henry C. Wallace. Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover, we know him, and then Secretary of Labor James J. Davis. Normalcy. Although coinage of the term normalcy is frequently attributed to Harding and apparently was used in the 19th century, Harding used it during the 1920 presidential campaign to mean a return to the relative calm that predated Woodrow Wilson, and the World War I era. Interesting. Mr. Harding was the first president to own a radio and speak on that radio. Supreme Court appointments: William Howard Taft, George Sutherland, Pierce Butler, and Edward T. Stanford. We read about Mr. Taft already. State of the Union, population of 1921, was 105,710,620. National debt of 1923 was 22,349,707,365. Number of states in the Union by 1923 still 48. Court case Eugene versus Debs, 1855 through 1926. The presidential candidate for the Socialist Party in 1920, Eugene Debs, ran his campaign from the penitentiary or the jail in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was serving a 10-year sentence for breaking the Sedition Act of 1918. Debs had long been involved in the American Railway Union, which he helped create, and he had organized the famous strike against the Great Northern Railroad in 1894. Later, he helped with the Pullman strike, and while in jail for interfering with the mail, read and embraced the writings of Karl Marx. While in jail for interfering with the mail, he read and embraced the writings of Karl Marx. Once released, he served 5 times as the presidential candidate for the Socialist Party. President Harding released Debs from prison in 1921. Mr. Debs died 5 years later. So 1926, he passed away. Crazy. Harding was the first president to visit Alaska and Canada. Prohibition for 13 years. Prohibition. On January 16, 1920, the 18th Amendment went into effect, prohibiting the sale of alcohol. Oh, how I wish we had those days again. This action was years in the making, starting with the work of temperance societies, earlier in the 19th century, combined with pleas by churches, some business owners, and progressives of the early 20th century. Many states had already outlawed alcohol, and during World War I, some prohibitionists argued that it was a patriotic measure since German Americans owned many of the nation's breweries. Interesting. The actual amendment did not outlaw consumption, but did prohibit the manufacturing, transporting, and selling of alcohol. Enforcement proved to be a time-consuming and expensive process, and eventually was one of the primary reasons for its repeal. President Harding did not observe prohibition, and alcohol continued to be served at the White House, albeit in private rooms. Prohibition was repealed in 1933 by the ratification of the 21st Amendment. Mr. Harding enjoyed playing poker and reportedly lost a set of White House china in one day. Mr. Harding was the first president who did not outlive his father. That's interesting. Let's see, his father died when? Let's see when his father died. 1928. Wow. Mr. Harding, George Tyrone Harding, died 5 years after his son. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, 5 years? Yeah, 4, 8. Yeah. About 5 years. All right. I'll be right back.